Hello, friends. Welcome to another live show for the Interstellar Book Club, which is a sci-fi book club. Hi, I'm Steph. Chances are you're here and you know me. Hello, Tina. There's Tina.
Hi, I normally don't wear this sort of thing. My headphones wouldn't connect, so I had to run and grab my kids' headphones. I just want to say that. I'm Tina from Sound and Fury Book Reviews, and today I am a cat, apparently, a pink cat.
It was, you know what? We should own it and say it was totally intentional.
It fits with the book very well.
With the book.
If there's any book to wear cat ears on, it would probably be this one.
This one, yeah. Cool. So thank you guys for coming. Our other two hosts couldn't be here this month, but they do have plans to join us for next month. And before we get started talking about Terraformers, we should probably introduce what we're going to be reading for next month in case anybody wants to join us. So we are going to be reading The Luminous Dead for October. Super exciting, super spooky. The link to join us is in the description below if you want to join us, or you can just kind of follow my channel and I'll post it on updates, or follow any of the other hosts, which are linked to, so you can hear it from one of the four of us. Yeah. Cool. I do not feel like I can give a well description of Terraformers, but I can try unless you want to try.
I can try. It's probably not going to be very good either. I did not prepare. I didn't do my homework to prepare this.
It's okay. There's a lot that happens in this book.
And it's hard to do it without spoilers. Basically, it's set on a planet that is in the process of, surprise, surprise, being terraformed. It's being terraformed by a company. Over the course of the book, it's multiple different companies kind of take over parts of it. And we follow, there's 3 sections, each following different characters that are kind of loosely or directly connected to one another. And the entire thing is basically about environmentalism and about, corporate is bad. Mm-hmm. That's the easiest way to wrap it up. But there's like a volcano society that gets discovered. There's people who have been genetically modified. There's sentient animals. There is a sentient train, which I really liked. And it's so hard. I guess the point behind it is to show kind of how you can't control how people evolve and how planets change. And yeah, it's very complex, I find, in like its concept, even though the story isn't like super complicated, I guess.
Yes.
If you agree with that, I don't know.
I do 110%. and herein is why I give this caveat. I rated it a 3.
Okay.
But I feel like, given the big themes that the author tried to tackle, in theory, this book was incredible. Like what it tried to do. The author really took a bunch of big bites out of really big topics and tried to make it digestible. And my hat is off to this author for attempting to do this. But ultimately, the construction of the story fell flat for me. I think Roro in the comments said it would be a 4.5 if it was YA. And I get where River's coming with that, in the sense of what we'll talk about is like the dynamics between the very serious apocalyptic side and then the whimsy and
yeah, very cozy at times. Yeah.
So yeah. What did you rate it?
Like a 3.75.
Okay.
But I rounded up on Goodreads because I always round up on Goodreads.
Yeah.
I kind of like, I'm very generous. Because I'm like, I don't know. Yeah, because I found that I liked the cozy I would call it cozy. I don't know if that's the right word for it, but the cutesy, whimsical kind of thing. Yeah. The cutesiness of it, I kind of liked that, but I also was kind of like, it felt tonally different from what the book was trying to say at times, and I wasn't sure if that really worked. Those 2 elements worked together. The characters I found were not very they weren't very in-depth. Mm-hmm. But I also really liked the ideas behind it. Like, I really loved the ideas behind it. I also really loved the kind of very high level approach to like planet infrastructure and like how these things all connected and how the story connected over time. And I just yeah, I guess I'm in the same boat as you. I thought that it had really good ideas. I just don't know if those ideas were expanded on in the right kind of way that worked. I think I
Yeah.
don't know. It's complicated because yeah, like I don't think it's a bad book, of course. I also don't think it's a great book,
Yeah. Yeah.
but I was enjoying it when I was reading it. So
Exactly. Exactly. It's like, so I feel like the author attempted to, it was giving me Becky Chambers-esque characters, but those characters just were not fitting everything else that was going on, because I feel like at times the book was very plot heavy, and then it would just kind of do a pivot to being very character focused, and it would just kind of do this pivot back and forth, and that dynamic made me feel very confused. I just wanted the author to choose, is it plot driven or is it character driven? But I do see that what the author was trying to do, I think, was show that ultimately, even though this is a generational thing, it takes place over thousands of years. It also is like something like 50 something thousand years in the future from now, which I think we'll talk more about when we get into like the sci-fi-esque, the important part of it. But it's still about personhood. So I don't know if you can do that without making some part of it character focused. What do you think?
I'm trying to think through that. I agree with you for sure. And yeah, I think that I guess maybe the author didn't want to sacrifice one of those two elements, or wasn't sure how to kind of envelop them in a way that felt more fleshed out for both. Because yeah, it does feel like both are lacking something. Yeah, like the plot wasn't, I don't know, we get these snippets from the corporate bad guy's point of view, but only a little bit. And I was like, why do we even have those other than to explain the plot? But it felt like we should have gotten more of that in a way to give more background to those characters. Because I feel like when you have a flat villain, it's hard to care as much about the main characters, because you're like, well, I don't understand what they're really up against.
Well, we know the big bad guy is capitalism, but like the whole point of it all is how deep does that go, and how much of it is premeditated war and all those other things that happen that go along with the expansion of capitalism.
Yes.
But I totally agree with you, Roro. I don't need complex characters in big idea sci-fi all the time, for sure. Just let the sci-fi do the talking.
Yeah, and I guess that's the thing this book tried to do both. And I think it should have dropped some of the characters, maybe had more characters that were less complex, had less kind of relationships with other characters, and they were just kind of mechanisms for kind of showing the point. Because I think that there's no character that, generally, if you're making like an allegory or an argument about something, you have a villain character that stands in for the entity that you're trying to critique, like capitalism or whatever, corporate stuff. But we don't really have that here. We kind of have Ronnie, but she doesn't really have and then she disappears in the last section. So you're like, okay, there's no way to kind of personify this in a way that works as a metaphor, but it's not overt enough as like I don't know. It's so complicated, because you're like, I don't know how to fix this. You know what I mean? Like, I don't have any suggestions.
Yeah. Especially that it's like, okay, we know that a majority of CEOs and people who are like these multi-billionaires, nobody gets there to that level of wealth ethically, right? Yeah. And so that being said, I would have been much more interested in having the villain, one character stand in representative of the larger issue, be more fleshed out, and focus in on their personality to exemplify the problem. And like you said, have characters who are experiencing the repercussions of these choices alongside the characters who are trying to actively fight this battle. Like, is there an answer to how do we end capitalism when it's gone this far? I don't know.
And maybe that's almost the point of it. It's like, well, we're never going to get rid of this problem, but it's still important, I guess, to kind of fight back against it in small ways that you can. But I don't know if that was a strong enough argument, because I never thought of that once until right now.
Yeah I agree. I feel like nothing that we've said is spoilers, so I think we're still good.
I think we're fine. Yeah. The plot is so twisty in a way, not twisty in like a thriller way, but twisty in that there's so many different little kind of like little inlets into the big river that it's hard to kind of spoil it, I think, unless you were to just say this happens in the final chapter.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, can we talk about how the book is divided into sections, maybe?
Yeah.
I don't know how, like,
so,
go.
So we have Destry, who's part of the, I'm not going to remember anyone's name. Sorry, I'm terrible at this. And I also read this book like 3 weeks ago. The Environmental Protection Reserve or something, right? Something like that.
Something like that.
Yeah. And so she's doing a survey and she finds the Hidden Volcano Society. And that kind of section is about that and what that means for the corporate entity that controls the planet in a very, very vague terms. And then the second part, this is the one that I'm least. Can you talk about the second one and I'll talk about the third part?
Can I talk about the second one? I'm not going to lie to you, Tina. All I remember from the second one was I zoned out for a second. I zoned back in. They're in a strip club with cats and someone is having sex. And I was like, what is going on? How did we get here?
The second one part blends into the third part, I find, even though it's set so far away. And that one's about, oh my God, I can't even remember what happens in that section. That section was my least interested one.
Yes, the first and third were my favorite sections.
Yeah, and then the third is about this sentient train.
Yeah.
And it's about allowing connection between, so the new corporate entity that's owning the planet doesn't want transit between the cities because basically that's how people find out that they're being screwed over because they can communicate with other people and see how other people live. And so they want to separate them. And then it also has to deal with the Volcano Society as well. But I don't want to say too much because it's kind of, it's also, I'd have to talk for like 20 minutes to explain everything just to get to that part.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm gonna try to attempt to give each section like a 1 or 2 sentence overview so people can kind of see what the
okay. I'm bad at that. If you have,
I'm gonna try. I'm gonna attempt. So I would say section 1 is we know it's about terraforming, but it's about the land policies and the way that affects Indigenous groups, who gets to claim rights to land ownership, and is land ownership as a term an ethical practice. The second section is years and years, like, I don't know, 1,000 years, maybe, I don't know, years later.
So. It's 800 or something like that. Yeah.
Something like that. And it's like, okay, we're past that problem now because take a guess at who wins that situation. And now it's like, all right, we have cities. How does gentrification now fall into this, right? How do these characters who were a cog in the capitalist wheel, how did they serve their purpose? How are they then now just members of society? And then what does that mean for them going forward versus those who profited off the situation? And then third is capitalism is out of control. Sentience is applied to everything. What happens when capitalism plateaus? Maybe, kind of. I don't know. Hypercapitalism has reached its pinnacle, and now what? I don't know.
Yeah. And then there's a whole part overlying all three is this idea of treaties and land ownership and who owns what. And which I think is the main kind of point, which ties it back to our real world, I think, that's the thing that ties it back to reality.
Yes.
Is that whole concept. But no, that was really good. I would have never been able to.
Sweet.
I'm like, oh, stuff
happened. Listen, I've been sitting on this for 2 days since I finished it. Because at first I was like, what happened? And then slowly, after thinking about it for the past 48 hours, I'm like, oh, Annalee Newitz is really freaking smart. Okay.
Yeah, no, for sure. That's the thing I got from this book. I'm like, this person, they know what they're doing.
They did their research.
Yeah. There's an article about them doing research on this. Actually, I didn't read the whole thing. I was just like, oh, that's good to know. I'm glad because sometimes I edit for a job and you can tell when people don't do any research at all. And you're like, you can get away with this in a movie, but in books, people expect a little more realism.
Yeah.
Like zoom and enhance is not a real thing with security footage. People seem to think it is because of Blade Runner, but it's not.
It's not.
or CSI or whatever.
There is potentially AI recognition in some facets, but
That's
like
true.
that is not the same mechanism. So.
No, but I see it all the time in thrillers. I'm
Yeah.
like, you could just Google this and see if it's real.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
Cool. So, do you have anything particularly that you want us to focus on at first, or should I
No,
go
I'm
off
happy
my
to just
list?
kind of jump in and see what happens.
Okay, cool. So I have notes.
Yay! I love notes.
Yay! Yay! Okay, so I'll give you an option, I guess, where we could start. Do we want to talk about personhood first, or do we want to talk about the overall issue of corporate greed?
These are very different topics.
Yeah.
And both of them are very complicated.
Which one do you want to start with?
Let's start with corporate greed, because I think that one's probably won't be as, I don't know, not long, but
Okay.
hard to dish out, I think, because I think we're on the same page.
Yeah.
Corporate greed is bad.
Yes.
Unless you're a secret capitalist.
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. If I could live in a commune and bake bread and share it with everyone in exchange for trading, I would.
Oh yeah, no, I feel you there. It'd be nice to just not have to worry about that.
Yeah. Rower says the author has a pop culture podcast. All her opinions are correct. Oh, yay! That sounds
That's
fun. Cool. Okay, so I don't think I can talk about this without going on a soapbox for a second, so I'm going to apologize in advance.
Go for it. I'll just listen.
What was really fascinating to me, and I don't know if the author was conscious of this as an underlying philosophical theme throughout all of this, because in my mind, capitalism goes hand in hand with something called necropolitics. Are you aware of that term?
Not in the sense that I could define it, but I have heard it used in various contexts.
Okay, so necropolitics is a philosophy by an African writer named Achille Mbembe. And the theory is about, aside from knowing capitalism is bad, how corporate greed leads to unethical practices, people who suffer, blah, 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 blah. It is also in conjunction with the idea of democracy being the general like goal of peace and a structure in which voices are heard, but that in itself comes at a cost, because democracy is framed around different power structures and systems that require certain individuals, majoritively indigenous peoples, brown peoples, peoples who are generally marginalized, to actively be oppressed in some way, shape, or form to maintain that democracy. And I think that that's super relevant here, especially in the first section with the Archaeans. Is that it? The people?
I think that's how I was reading it. Yeah. Archaeans,
yeah. So the reason I bring this up is because the corporation, Verdance, is that the name of the company?
Yep.
Yes. Okay. Verdance has terraformed this planet to be Earth-like. And in part of that process, ultimately people are going to evolve, right? And so the people evolve, but the company has within their policy and expectation that these people are going to expire after their purpose on this land has been fulfilled, to make space for the investors to come and essentially become like settlers, build whatever properties they're going to build, and for it to become a money grab. But the people don't just disappear. Hey, they're still alive. So what do they do about it now? It causes a huge conflict, and our people end up in a situation where they're asking for help from Destry to resolve a water situation in which the water is being diverted to land that the company deems more important. And ultimately they think that in a proper democracy that they can have a contract and a treaty and that things will work out. But I think that they really undermined the selfishness that brought the terraforming about in the first place. And therefore, that to me is a direct illustration of necropolitics. But again, I don't know that the author was necessarily using that term in the way that I am describing this.
Yes, that makes sense. Yeah, it's almost like the Archaeans didn't. They seem to have this idea that democracy will protect them, and I don't. Yeah, like you said, tied exactly to what you said. I don't think that is the case, and I don't think that's the case in real life either. And I think that they're too hopeful, and I don't think that is a problem to be hopeful. But it was just from an out. I think we're meant to read it as don't get your hopes up. And I think that's the kind of message behind it, is like, don't rely on democracy to protect you. And I just find that really fascinating, because what else can you do? Like, what's the alternative then? If you can't rely on the systems that are supposed to protect you, what systems can you ethically turn to? Right? Because I mean, they could be like, okay, we're going to destroy the entire planet with our volcano. But how does that solve anything? And then you have innocent people that are caught up in that aren't Verdants, that are people that are stuck there too. And so it's I think they were trying to show a situation where there is no, it's really hard to find a positive outcome for the people that are being like the ones being put upon, having their land and their water taken away.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I think it definitely ties into what you were explaining with the necropolitics, for sure.
Yeah. Ideally, we want to have hope, right? And I feel like maybe that was the motivation for the author to start becoming character focused in some places, because it's like, how, if we don't have these characters giving us a reason for hope, which is in itself like a communal thing, right? The way that we think about space, the way that we think about personhood, all of that, in order to move forward in a way that is protective of the planet that they're on, that's being terraformed, has to come with some semblance of hope. But going up against someone who has all of these resources and whose initial plan was that this planet was probably going to turn to shit anyway, because once it's been terraformed and once it's been utilized for all its resources, all of the land is used, all of the infrastructure has maxed out capacity and mining and whatever else is going on, they're just going to move on to another planet. So is it a losing battle?
Yeah, because the people that live there, that are going to be stuck there after the company leaves, that have to live there in the basically probably very degraded society, because the resources, as you said, are going to be like lesser and lesser. The environment is going to probably be destroyed because of all the mining and stuff they do. So these people are going to, in generations, going to suffer the repercussions of this company. But the company doesn't care, because they're like, we've moved on. And that seems to be a similar thing. Like, you see people slap up cheap housing, they throw it all together, they block a river, or they pollute a lake in order to set up these, or build a quarry or something like that. They don't care about the people that live around it, the people that are going to live there in 3 generations. They just care about their profits now. And I think this is just like that on a mega scale. Like, it's like we have protests near my my city for quarries that are being done. Kind of, there's a massive quarry. You drive by it and you're just like it's almost not awe-inspiring in a good way, but in like a horrific way. When you drive by this, it's like, it's just regular country road. You drive by, and then the trees part for a little bit, and you see this huge freaking hole. Like, it's massive, and it's so big. Like, I've been to a meteor crater in Arizona. It's like the size of that, and you can't, it's like a kilometer long, kilometer deep. You can't comprehend it. And I'm like, how is this thing half an hour from my house and I don't even know about it? Like, when I hear people protesting the quarry, I was like, okay, it's like a little hole in the ground. I get it. It's near their house. It's loud. And I'm like, no, this is what they're protesting.
It's a big problem.
Just big scoop out of the landscape. And I'm like, that's what the planet is. This Saskia is going to look like. It's going to be big holes everywhere, and people living with no resources and bad water and stuff.
Yeah. And I think you make a really good point there, is like, when we have individuals who are so far removed from the project, right? It's like you said, like you thought had one idea of what it was until you actually got to see it. And that's for
Yeah.
all of us. We all
Yeah.
have issues that we're like, I think I understand what's going on. But until you actually confront the issue and dive into your research on it, you might actually realize, oh, this is a much bigger problem than I was conscious of. And so, but that in and of itself shows, I think, what this company is relying on, this planet being so far removed from the original Earth, being so far removed from potentially who knows how many other planets that they're terraforming, and relying on that distance in order to make sure that empathy does not disrupt or dismantle the system that is gaining them profit.
Yeah. And also, like, what are people, how do you combat this? Like, to use the real life example here, people put signs up on their lawns, they email their mayor or whoever their I'm trying to think of how you guys would call it in the States, but like your
mayor,
governor, kind of our premiers, our province leader, like, but that they don't care.
Yeah.
Like, what are they going to do? Like, other than like destroying the machines, like, what are you? And even then, they're just going to bring in more machines, and the workers are going to get upset because they're like, well, now we can't work, we can't make money, and the workers, a lot of people in that industry, they can't choose to go into another profession. They know how to drive a forklift, and that's their job, and they go where they're sent. And I guess it's hard because how much do you put on the people working there, and how much do you put on the corporate leaders?
Yeah,
because it's very interesting. I just find it fascinating. I'm not trying to blame them. My husband's a construction worker.
No,
I'm not saying construction workers are bad, obviously, but like,
no.
I'm saying sometimes the projects, like my husband builds Amazon warehouses. Like, is that a good thing to be building?
Right, but it's at a certain point we can't not be a part of the system or participate in the system in order to make a living, when that's what we're forced to be a part of because of location and accessibility. You know, it takes a certain, honestly, I think in this day and age, if you have if you're in an area like I am in the New York City area, it takes a certain level of resources to be able to survive outside of that system.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. It's hard. And even in like I have a little business, and sometimes we have to make choices that I'm like, I wouldn't have published this book on my own, but it makes sense for our company. You know what I mean? Like, it's like you have to like, it's like I'll be editing something and I'll be like, I disagree with this person's perspective, but it's not my job to say this is wrong. This message you're espousing in your book is wrong. Like, that's not, then I won't get paid.
Absolutely.
I won't get further jobs because people won't want to work with me. And I'm like, you have to like make these mini concessions for like the things that you think are important, I guess. Like, I would never work on a book that was like anti-environmental or like misogynist or anything like that. But when books have certain leanings that aren't exactly my politics, I can't be like, well, I'm not going to edit this just because it's slightly this or it's slightly that. I mean, I don't know. Right. It's hard. It's hard, and I struggle with it.
Yeah, that makes total sense. At a certain point, you have to kind of like decide where is the line and where are you willing to help guide people and work with them in a way that still kind of reflects your own ethics, but no, it's not doing irreparable harm. And then say, okay, this is taking it too far.
Yeah, exactly. And sometimes that line changes based on kind of your situation or where you are. And like, if you need money, sometimes you have to go out and do things that you wouldn't necessarily agree with in theory, but nothing actively harmful, but just like generally something in principle you don't agree with.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah. It's complicated.
Absolutely. And kind of back to the book, it's like we have all these different characters we have a sentient moose, we have a train, we have
I love that moose.
I love that moose so much. What a good moose.
My favorite character was that moose.
And so we have all these different characters that are in different ways, like more deeply rooted into actively being in the system, products of the system, or like more on the periphery, depending on their role and when their role has expired. But like this idea that these corporations are people who are making profit off of using these individuals, either their identity or their land or their culture, like commodifying it for their own personal gain. The idea that they're going to do anything philanthropic that is not inadvertently going to reciprocate back into their wallet is just it doesn't exist. In order to make that kind of change, you have to hurt their wallet, right? And so with the trains specifically, I thought that was such a good, I mean, I wouldn't have thought of trains, but like I thought it was such a good analogy for that.
Yeah.
And that this person, which I want to talk to about that word at some point.
Yes. Yeah.
Like that this person that has been created specifically for this role and given sentience and we're going to say quote unquote rights to exist in this space ultimately decides and knows that that is a falsehood. Do you know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, like they realize they're part of this system and they can't escape this system. And that's frustrating.
Yeah.
Yeah, like that's basically, that's kind of their trajectory, I think, is like realizing this and being like, what do I do? How do I deal with this?
It's crazy.
It's,
Rower says ratings up to 3 of 5. Hey, we're doing things. I feel like the more I talk about it, the more I want to give it a higher rating. But like, would I reread it? Absolutely not. I was so bored. But like in theory, it was great.
I enjoyed it, but I enjoyed it because I liked the little, like, it's, I don't know, I guess because it flowed. I found it flowed nicely for me. And also there was a lot of talk about infrastructure stuff and like like connecting, like, I don't know, the little nitty-gritty things of world building that I really like the little tiny things where I always complain about. I'm like, but where does the sewage go? You know, like stuff like that. When I'm reading fantasy, I'm like, but who deals with this? Like, how does this actually work realistically? And I think this book actually delves into a lot of that stuff. And I'm like,
yes, that if like, I guess if you're an infrastructure or like hard sci-fi mechanics nerd, you're gonna eat this up.
Yeah, and I'm a nerd for alien cultures, and I'm a nerd for like how cities are built on different planets. I'm not a nerd for how spaceships work. I don't care what type of engine it has. Just tell me it has a warp drive. That's all I need.
Yes. Oh, okay. So then in that case, what did you think about the flying moose?
I loved the flying moose. I mean, I didn't understand how the moose flied. I didn't understand how the moose flew. Like, did it? I can't remember. Does it have wings?
They didn't say. It has a gravity mesh, I think it was.
Right. And it just kind of like hovers around. Okay.
Something, but it wasn't explained.
I was okay with that because I loved the moose so much. And it felt like it was part of that, like, kind of quirky, whimsical part of it. Like, it kind of felt like that was separate from the hard sci-fi world building. And then you have these little cutesy animals that fly around and talk. And I was like, I don't know why it worked for me. I have no idea why this worked for me.
Yes.
Because this is something I probably would have been like, this is too cutesy, despite my ears. You know, they light up. I don't know how to get them to turn on. Like... They somehow light up. I don't know how to get it to work. There must be a battery in here or something.
The irony of your statement and your current aesthetic is not lost on me. It's great.
Where was I? Yeah, it's weird because they didn't really get into it too much about why the animals were sentient. Like they did a bit, but it was like kind of, unless I missed it.
Yeah, okay, so I feel like at first I didn't really understand, and then somewhere in the third section with the train, is it Scrub J? Is that the name of the train?
Yes.
Okay.
Scrub something.
Something. Okay. Scrubby.
Scrubby.
The train. When we got some more expansion as to like the purpose as to why the company chose to make the train sentient in order for them to be able to make decisions without being monitored that are best for the company. They don't have the full information as to why certain areas should be accessible by certain groups of people or not. They just think it's more efficient. That is not the case, blah, blah, blah. So I think in retrospect, having all of those other things or creatures and things, worms be sentient, was, I think, the company acknowledging, again, going back to necropolitics, this idea of giving certain peoples and groups of peoples agency, but only agency in a parameter that is going to work towards the larger goal, keeping them aware of what they need, but with a framing that makes them expendable once that task is completed.
So did the animals, did they naturally evolve sentience, or did they give them it?
I don't think so.
So they like bioengineered them that way.
Yeah.
Because I know that Whistle, that was the moose, right?
Yes.
That he was bioengineered, because they talked about that and how his brain parameters are allowed to function.
Yes. Yeah, I think so.
Because, so yeah, that sounds right. Yeah. And it just they didn't get into too much detail about that particular thing. I could have used a paragraph just saying, in 2900, someone just figured out how to do this, and now the company's bought it, and they own the rights to making sentient animals, and they use it for this. Like, that would have been just very helpful. Yeah. Because the whole time I was like, why does this cat talk? I don't understand. I'm just going to go with it.
Great. But yeah, I think that is what we were supposed to get out of that particular scene, where Whistle gets upgraded from like baseline vocabulary to having a higher sentience. Can we talk about that? Because that part made me really sad.
Oh, my heart broke for Whistle the whole time. He's like, my girlfriend doesn't love me because I'm stupid. Basically,
oh, like, baby. Oh, it's sad.
But and then he knows that he's not. Like, he knows his brain is capable of this, but he's held back. And I thought that was really, really the most frustrating part. It was like, the company has not allowed him to go up to his full, like, just live his life as he wants to be. Like, he wants to be able to speak in less than simple sentences. Like, I don't know. It was, that part, I think we're meant to find that frustrating, and obviously,
it was so frustrating. I guess, would it be fair to say that this, in a way, could be an analogy for peoples with disabilities, and like the company profiting off of not giving them the resources that they need to be successful?
I think so. Like, I don't know what else it was supposed to really stand for, like what it was supposed to represent. Probably tied back into what you said too about using people for what they need them for and not caring what happens. Like, they don't care about the fact that this creature or multiple creatures are feeling upset because they can't express themselves the way they want to. They just care that the moose does what the moose is supposed to do for the company. So I think it ties back to what you said in that way.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. Yeah. Poor moose.
I do wonder how that cat was a journalist, though. Like, do they have fingers? How is this? What's the type?
Well, I mean, Moose was texting, weren't
That's
they?
true. It must be like a voice to text thing, or like something like that. Yeah, that makes sense, I guess.
Some like internal connection that allows them to type thoughts in a different channel or something.
Yeah, that makes sense. I don't know why I didn't think about that.
I don't know. I just made an assumption. Moose doesn't have thumbs, so I assumed it was all internal.
Yeah, for the moose for sure. There's the cat. For some reason I was picturing the cat typing, and I was like, why am I picturing this? That's not what the cat's doing.
Maybe. Also, like a one character that I thought was just a fun add-in, but also my brain went, why? Was it Jaguar? Was that the name of the door?
I loved the sentient door. That was like that. When I got to that part of the book, I was like, I'm in. I'm into this book now. I thought that was so funny, and Jaguar was so like grouchy and spicy.
Yeah, I mean, rightfully so. I'd be also salty if I was stranded and not able to like go back to my home, which was that ship.
Which was a ship,
yeah.
I just love that that the company was like, oh yeah, we'll make the doors sentient for some reason instead of just auto doors. But I guess because then the guy was like, what benefit would this have to the company to have this door that's sentient?
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's wild. I don't know.
Because you think you'd be able to just program an algorithm to say, okay, open up if people show up, open up. Maybe it doesn't require like eye scan, like retinal scans and stuff, maybe like for that kind of. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe this is just the company taking it too far and being loosey-goosey because they have so much power and like, so what if doors and worms have sentience?
It's like a Jurassic Park situation. They just
Yeah.
want to see if they could. They didn't care if
So
they
we
should.
should. Yeah. Like, let's go all the way and then really
I also, we're in spoilers now, right? I'm assuming.
Oh, I think we're way past that. I don't even know what
I love how Jaguar got married.
Wait, Jaguar got married to
Got
who?
married. They mentioned that Offset is they got married to those the two little racing bots, I think.
The one that they were arguing with?
Yeah.
Oh, you know what? I love that for them.
It was a very like one-off quick, and I was like, what? Okay.
Huh?
I would have liked to have seen that develop.
Yeah. Oh no, I totally missed that.
It was very thrown in there. It's when they go back to the volcano, like very near the end, and they see Jaguar, and they're like, "Oh, we got married," and I was like, "What?"
What? Okay. Oh, I will say, speaking of which, so I listened to the audiobook.
Oh,
I highly recommend the audiobook.
Oh, okay.
Like there were certain filters that were used for the different characters. Like for Jaguar, it had that like reverberation of someone
cool.
And for the two little like flying thingies that they married, they had like the author's voice duplicated, so it sounds like multiple voices at one time.
That's awesome.
Anytime that there were quite a few scenes where someone played a jingle, and there were lots of jingles throughout the book. So and then the end where the trains were singing was actual singing.
I forgot about the trains were singing.
I forgot to, but until now. But highly recommend the audiobook.
I wish I'd listened to audiobook now instead of reading.
It was a fun
That would have been fun.
Yeah, it was fun.
I would have probably like loved that, to be honest, because I love when audiobooks like just have such a good production value. And it seems to be the case now. They're just I mean, it is growing part of the industry.
Yeah, really high production value. So good job.
Yeah.
Okay, what else? Do you have anything else you want to focus on, or should I keep going down the list?
No, we can do the personhood one if you want to talk about that. I know you mentioned that.
Do you want to start us off?
Oh, I don't know. Like where do I start with this? You go. To be honest, I want to see what you have to say to where I can jump off on, because I'm more of like, what is she going to say? I want to know. I'm curious.
So maybe we can kind of unpack how everything has personhood. And that feels like a very indigenous way of viewing the world. Mm-hmm. Right? I don't know. Maybe you can speak more on, is that a good jumping off point? Please take it away.
Yeah, I don't know enough about indigenous beliefs in that way to really comment on that.
Okay.
In the sense of like specifically that, but I did think that it was, I wonder how that tied in with the corporate, like why they would allow that, I guess you could say.
Allow
like it seems like you have, like if you give someone personhood, they have rights. Generally. Yeah. So the corporation, like, why didn't they just use robots? Was it cheaper?
I don't know. That's a great question. I guess ultimately the notion that if you give everything sentience, that everything is eventually going to be able to have a certain level of self-awareness. And in order to combat that being out of their control, establish general rights of personhood for everything. Yeah, because it's not like everyone had the same rights. Mm-hmm. Right? Like Whistle didn't have the same rights, right? Right, because they were a mount, and mounts don't have hypercognition. Yeah. They just have like a certain level of vocabulary, whatever it takes to get the task done. Yeah. And so that felt very icky. Yeah, super icky. Yeah. Like categorizing people based on like that whole thing about what was the test they had, or like there was a phrase they used that was it? I don't remember. Like a litmus test? Something like that, but it had to do with like
whether or not someone had sentience or not, and they prescribed that to them.
Almost like an IQ test.
Yeah, and there was like it was like the people in the volcano didn't use it because they considered it unethical.
Yeah.
But obviously the corporation did.
Yeah.
As you said, a way to control them.
Yeah.
So yeah, maybe the whole thing is like if they this is so complicated.
Yeah.
Do you have any thoughts on this? And like,
yeah. So I mean, I'm not an expert on like indigenous culture and beliefs, but what I remember from learning about this in school was that just like thinking about Native American culture and the idea of the land not having ownership, that all are part of the land.
Yeah.
And that if a life is taken of something, that is something to be cherished and is a gift, right? And needs to be moved forward and respected by utilization of all points of that. So I think in a way it ties into that idea of like every being, no matter how big or how small, having sentience is a person, and the company taking that framework and commodifying it in order for them to reach their financial goals is not too far off of what companies do now, and like cultural appropriation and stealing different things or like deeming certain cultures valuable by taking aspects of their belief system, of their rituals, of their artwork, of their writing, and saying, this is now important and deserving of rights and protection by us because it helps our cause. And if it's not, then destroy it, right?
That makes sense.
I feel like that kind of echoed that sentiment.
Yeah, no, that totally makes sense. It's so complicated.
It's a lot. The author did a lot. These are like really big concepts that the author was pulling from. And my hat is off. Like, I really don't know.
Oh yeah, lots of things to think about. And there's so much to think about. It's hard. I think you would have to, like, each concept, you could talk about it for a long time, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, I'm going to pivot a little bit. There was a scene. So when the apocalyptic things happened, which I guess in a way we could say there were multiple, like we had the volcano situation. I don't know what happened at the end. If you can somehow clarify to me, if you're able to, something about bodies falling out of the sky. I don't know what happened there.
I don't know. Honestly, I can't remember. I can't remember at all.
It was a lot happening. So I don't know. For me, I was a little bit confused, and I might not be the person to really listen to on this, but for me, the part of the reason that I was confused was it going back to that pivot from thinking on a big picture to thinking about the character, to the character viewing this big picture event, to just like certain groups in society in bits and pieces. And the framework just would not allow my brain to really hone in onto what was happening in those specific scenes. But ultimately, the point is, it goes wrong eventually, because it always goes wrong.
I feel bad because I'm like, I can't remember at all. I don't think I fully kind of got it either, to be completely honest. Like what was actually happening. I understood even the resolution. I'm like, why is my mind blanking on what happens at the very end?
Yeah, I don't know. I know
that they were given that the overarching government that we don't see very often did say that the Archaeans were that was their whole point. They wanted to be seen as was it a society, or was it what did they want to have kind of legislated about them to protect them?
That they might have been a society?
Yeah, it was something like that, that they were, because if they had that, then if the company destroyed them, it would be seen as, it would be something the company could be held liable for because they weren't company property anymore.
Right.
So I think that's what it was. They were petitioning the government to be seen as not company property. I think that's what it was.
They were going for public, was it Public Planet? Is that what it was?
Something like that. Yeah. And something like that. And so I think they did manage to accomplish that right at the end, right? Because of this whole complicated scheme
Yeah.
that I can't remember.
There's a lot.
There was just so much, and each section had a different kind of, like, the first one had that kind of like rebellion war fight at the end, and then the second one, I don't even remember what happened in that one. There was somehow they kind of backstabbed the company in the second part, right? It was more of like
Yes.
It was more like a subterfuge thing than an outright kind of.
I think so.
Right, because they were the sentient trains were the result of that.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes. I think.
I wish I'd finished this a few days ago, like you, because I'm like, I can't remember it.
No, I you're doing better than I. Says their debut was a robot rights book with time travel. That makes so much sense.
Autonomous, right? I think
so.
It was called. It's been on my list. I never read it.
Me too. We should drop it into the book club suggestions.
Yeah,
that'd be fun. I'd be willing to read other things from this author. But yeah, so staying on, like, I guess the framework of how those different events happened in the different sections. Personally, I feel like I would have liked to see this published in almost a similar format to Murderbot, where it's like separate novellas.
Yeah.
Right? I feel like putting them all together just felt like way too much for me.
That might have been it too. It's like, it's too much. There's too many things going on. There's very complicated, complex issues that require a lot of thought. And sometimes these things are just brought up in passing. I mentioned this because I did a review on it, because I was like, I want to do a review on
You did great, by the way.
Oh, thank you. But I mentioned the thing about so the dairy farm.
Yeah.
Which was frustrating. It was one of the only frustrating things to me, because I was like, it's kind of going against its point. And if I can, do you want me to, I'll explain it again. So basically, they go to this dairy, they come by this dairy farm, and they're like, it's sulfur. It's in the second part, right?
Yes.
Sulfur and
I forgot their name, but it's a cow.
Yeah, there's a cow. Oh yeah, the cow. So the cow is like, not just the cow, but like other people are disgusted with the fact of drinking animal milk.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, that's a super vegan idea. That's fine. People can be vegan. Like, I have no problem with that. But then they were like, imagine drinking milk from a person. And I was like, we drink milk from people.
We do.
We do. And it's normal. I mean, there's some people, like some Inuit tribes, that breastfeed until the kids are 8 or 9, because it's the most easy source of food, and it has a ton of nutrients in it. And I'm definitely not one of those, you should breastfeed, not formula feed, but because I did both with my kids. But breast milk, like breastfeeding, is very eco-conscious, because there's no resources you're using to do it. And as I said in my review, like formula, they have to make it at the factory. They have to package it in, like, the ones I used to get came in this like plastic box, and inside the plastic box is a vacuum sealed package that you have to throw away, and you can't recycle it. It comes with a little plastic scoop. It's not eco-friendly at all. So I don't understand what the alternative would have been in this society to children or babies not having breast milk.
Yeah.
And I just thought it was interesting. Like, I don't think that was the point they were trying to say, but it just seemed like it wasn't very thought out, where everything else in the book seemed thought out. But I was like, this seems to negate, because that's the first thing that went to my mind. I was kind of like insulted. I was like, so I should feel bad for breastfeeding my kids because it comes from a person?
Yeah, I don't
it was
know.
Weird. I was trying to wrap my head around it, and
I get what you're saying. Yeah, and so it's not the villainization of people who choose not to breastfeed their kids.
Yeah,
right. It's like it's a kid. There's a lot of different factors that go into that are completely valid.
Yes,
but I totally get what you're saying. I think to me it kind of sounded like maybe a play on the ridiculousness that some people make of like, can you imagine having ice cream that's vegan? But like people have it all the time. So I guess maybe it was a play on like frivolous jabs that people make to things that they can't relate to, but are still valid things. But I don't know if it actually like landed the way it was supposed to. I don't think it was malintent on the author's part.
No, I don't think so either. I don't think it was intending to vilify that at all. I just felt like it just seemed like that part wasn't thought about. And maybe that's fine. That's okay. But I just was like, well, what's like, I drink milk alternatives. I don't drink.
Yeah, same.
Yeah. But my kids drink like 3 point, like homo milk. We call
Yeah.
it homo milk here. I don't remember you guys call it in the States.
Milk?
Yeah, like 3%, like homogenized. That's what we.
Oh,
You
yeah,
guys call it
homogenized.
do you guys call it that? You guys call it
Yeah,
something else. don't you?
homogenized. Yeah, yeah.
Oh, some place calls it something else because I call it homo milk.
Is it
And people are like, what are you
pasteurized?
saying? And no, that's different.
No. Well, I don't think we use the abbreviation of homo milk,
I know
but we
it
just
sounds
say
weird.
like whole milk, 2%.
Maybe that's what it
3%.
is, but I know that
Yeah.
I know where I live is because it's short for homogenized. But like people, I said it to someone once and they were like offended by it. I was like, "What do you mean? It's not homophobic milk? Like, what do you mean?"
Like, what are you talking
It
about?
was very funny. I was like, "Oh, I never thought about that."
Just like, I'm Canadian. Stop.
We have weird stuff. I was watching this YouTube thing, and this guy was like the stuff that we have here in Canada that you guys don't have in the States, that he was like so blown away by. And one was like the fact that we pay for at restaurants, they bring a machine to us, and we
For
just
what?
tap our credit cards because we don't let the
Oh.
server take our credit card away.
Oh, yeah.
And sign it and all this stuff. They just bring a little portable machine to us, and we pay on the machine. And the machine comes with a tip option that figures out the tip for you.
Yeah,
And
some places
some
do
places
that
do
now,
have
but
that.
not all do. It's very
Yeah.
common for them to take your card, go, and come back.
Yeah, and so it was funny. It just reminded me kind of that. I was like, it's so funny that we're so close, like our countries, but there's some differences that are just
Yeah.
so
Oh, I
wild.
love that kind of stuff. I'm not gonna lie to you. I watch Canadian news because I find it so interesting.
Oh, I follow your guys' politics. It's like my reality TV. I'm like, I want another podcast about, like, I was sitting there. I came back from trivia on Tuesday, and I go on Disney Plus so I can like watch your guys like debate. I'm like, this is awesome. I was like having the best time. My husband's like, what are you doing down there? I'm like, I'm watching the debate. He's like, this is not your country. I'm like, but it's so exciting.
But it's so
entertaining."
interesting. Yeah, I'm sitting here like, this is horrifying on my side, but I'm watching you
know.
guys stuff, and I'm like, this is so fascinating. Anyway,
I feel horrified for you guys.
Yes. No, I wouldn't. What is the Canadian equivalent of BBC? I forgot what the channel is called. CBC. Yes.
The Canadian broadcasting.
Yes. Yes, I watched that. Okay, but we're totally off topic.
That's so funny. Yeah, sorry.
That's great. But yeah, oh my gosh, I forgot about the cow. I loved the cow.
I did love the cow. The cow was very, very saucy, I think, right? They're very grouchy and like, yeah.
I'd be saucy too if I was a cow. I'd be like, don't touch my udder. Leave me alone.
Exactly. But if the cow would the cow even have udders if it was a genetically modified cow? You think they would remove that stuff?
I mean,
maybe not. Maybe it's integral to their physiology, I guess.
Given that the whole villain of this thing is capitalism and they don't give a shit about anybody's bodily rights, only their accessibility to other causes, I don't see a reason why they would change the udder.
That's true.
But I don't know. I could be wrong. These are sentences I did not think I was going to say today. Oh, this is great. Okay, I think I went through everything on my list. Do you have any other points that you want to
make? I don't think so. I'll probably think of something later and be like, oh, I should have brought that up.
Okay.
But I'm bad at off the cuff thinking of things.
That's okay. It's okay, me too. Okay, cool. So I guess those are all of our thoughts. So if you enjoyed this live show, please go follow Tina and all of the other hosts, linked in the description. Also, the Discord server is there so you can join us. Vote for what books we read every month. Don't forget, we are going to read The Luminous Dead next month. And that's going to be a fun time.
It's Caitlin Starling, right?
Caitlin Starling, yes.
I've read 2 of her books before, actually, I realized.
Oh, did
I
you
read
enjoy
the oh my god, The Haunting of Somebody or Other. I don't know. And I read another one of hers. They're both very different. The Haunting one that she wrote was about, like, it's like a Victorian manor house, and a new wife moves to this mansion and weird stuff happens. Very kind of typical historical fiction horror. And then the other one that I've read of hers is called Last One to Enter the Room. That book is wild.
Oh.
It's this woman in her house, and there's something in the basement, and it's not what you think, and it's very interesting.
Is it a sci-fi or is it a horror?
It's a sci-fi horror, I would say. It's not really a sci-fi. Is it a sci-fi? I guess it's a sci-fi. It's interesting because you don't get a lot of, I'd say 90% of the book takes place in her house.
Oh,
So
I
like
love that.
it's really interesting.
I love
The
what is it called? I'm gonna add it.
Last to Enter the Room
Last.
or Last One in the Room. It's by her. So
Okay, so if I just look up
yeah,
Caitlin
Starling. I did a review on it too. If you
Starling.
want to check it out, I don't do any spoilers about it.
Let's see. Luminous Dead. Last to leave the room.
Yeah, and The Death of Jane Lawrence. That was the other one I read first. Yeah.
What in the world? Okay. I'm
It's
checking it out.
yeah, I read it last year. I got an arc of it and it was
Nice.
very interesting. Yeah.
Cool. Add it to TBR. Woo!
Yeah. It's weird. It's a little slow, but it's overall the concepts or something. I'm like, oh yeah, that's weird.
Cool. All right. So we're gonna do that. Also, next month makes 4 years of the Sci-Fi Book Club.
Wow.
So I don't know what we're gonna do, but maybe we'll do something fun. Who knows? But you gotta join the Discord and keep up on our channels and stuff to hear about what the shenanigans will be. So we'll figure that out later. But yeah, okay. I think that's it, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, great. Thank you everybody for coming. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.